going to get crazier from here. I was breaking it all down on twitter.com.
Steve and Dave use
A story happened to me.
there who's paying attention, what lesson does that kind of show? What works to the average person?
Destroying private property is okay, but if you mess with
Pays,
government
yeah.
property, it's not okay.
That's
Right.
right.
It should be the other way around. right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it.
On fire that they gained through the protests earlier this year. I think that's not entirely true. As I was downtown, I noted every time I looked up, each building had a giant Black Lives Matter banner on it. The churches have them covering it. It's everywhere. It's like they won. They won in D.C. That's for sure. Black Lives Matter has not extinguished any of its support. It has not burnt through that capital that it earned, aside from the $10 billion. And if you can't take any lesson at all, it's like you do that. But that's the problem. They were baited. We were baited into behaving like Antifa and Black Lives Matter when we cannot. It is counterproductive to our strategy.
Let me back this up.
That's correct. Yes.
I think you're right that people do generally support Black Lives Matter. But I have a graph here that I want people to see, which I've shown before. It's from Civics. Black Lives Matter registered voters, do you support or oppose the Black Lives Matter movement? Right after the George Floyd incident, net support for right before George Floyd lost his life, net support for Black Lives Matter was at 18%. So that means like above the margin, like above 50%. When the protests spiked, 24% net support. Then the riots started. Before George Floyd, Black Lives Matter enjoyed 18%. The riots hit and it dropped from 24 all the way down to 8%, where it currently sits right now, 8%. They had 18. They lost 10% of their net support in this country by rioting, and it has not come back. So they do enjoy general support on average in this country. But there was a point where even conservatives were like, I understand this George Floyd thing was really bad. Then they went and burned down mom and pop shops.
Yeah, it's not like the MAGA network went into this scene at the Capitol building with goodwill credit in the bank.
Exactly.
They already went in negative, owing money, on the run from the creditors trying to chase them down. And then they go and then they just chop their face off, man.
But
I like Deditor.
I replaced
Yeah, I like
you put that down with cop
Cop
choppers.
chopters. Yes. I love it.
The Deditor.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Andy.
they're saying that one of these guys, like a really well-known Q conspiracy guy, like the Viking guy, has been seen at events holding up signs for Q. Some people are trying to claim he's Black Lives Matter, and
He's not, no.
well, he may have been at an
The
event,
most
but they
transparent
cropped
election
out. There's a photo I see
processes
going
in the
around,
country.
and
The
you
bill
can't
can-
see what the sign says. It's
That's
cropped
what
out,
Q sent me.
and I think it pretty much says that.
That's what
No,
it said,
literally, it says
yeah.
Q sent me.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
a sign that he has there. There's a meme of him now, and it has that famous picture, and it says, "When you ordered the Village Pizza," and then it's a picture of him and all the other people standing in the background there. But again, a lot of disinformation, a lot of people just manipulating back, editorializing so they can push a certain agenda. And when we just stop looking at these agendas, we see a very bad picture of more fuel on the fire. And that's exactly what's happening with all the reporting, supposedly, that's going on today. Again, just trying to get as much disinformation, trying to get as much propaganda, trying to brainwash people to make you understand that kind of thing. We need to fight them at all costs. And now we're here at this stage, and we're not going to be going away anytime soon, because the algorithms that incentivize it, the mainstream media that spews it, the politicians who allow it, they're the ones who are still, sadly, at the helm. They're going to be expanding it and pushing it to a level that is going to become more and more unlivable, more and more.
Whatever the conditions were that launched Trump into presidency in 2016 are today, now, and going to get much worse than they were in 2015. It's going to be worse than the last term of the Obama presidency. They've got more money. They're better established. They've taken over more institutions. It's more in our schools. It's more in our kids. Our kids are just reciting things without even understanding it. So if you didn't like the way things were before, I have a feeling you're not going to like them very much in the next 3 or 4 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have an important update. I just got a notification. Google has disabled chat on this stream
Why's that?
for obvious reasons.
Get out of town.
Chat has been disabled, so no more chat for the people who are watching, but they're allowing the stream to continue because I guess because our conversation is calm and reasonable, and we're very
Interesting.
anti-violence
But
people.
chat's saying stuff.
We're not even making
Yeah.
any allegations. We're
No,
just
we're just-
telling
Well,
you what
chat-
other people are
yeah.
saying.
Chat has been disabled for things that people are saying they can't control and we can't moderate,
Wow.
so they're shutting it down.
Wow.
Welcome
Okay.
to whatever is coming next. I got no idea. But I just got contacted by Google right now. We noticed
like
that
chat froze.
chat wasn't working. And yeah.
We're making arguments against radicalization.
No, it's not on us. The stream's okay.
Yeah, the chat can get
Yeah, but
spicy.
you still get punished.
Again, people complain This is, well, what better segue than to talk about what's going on with the And let me tell you right now. So what I'm being told is that the chat has been disabled because people in the comments are inciting violence. We've got about 100,000 people who are live right now. It's big. A lot's going on. So I'll say this. Let me ask you guys your opinions, because I think it's a tough call when you have tons of people encouraging and inciting, especially at a time when things are so precarious. And Google is basically saying, keep doing the stream. We're not. It's not on you guys, but we can't control this. How do you guys feel about this disabling?
Whenever you stop conversations from happening, you fuel bad conversations. What's the saying? If you want to defeat a bad idea, you defeat it with good ideas. Yep. But by censoring it, you make it fester in the darkest, nastiest, ugliest elements of the internet that do exist and will continue to exist and will even persist even more once you censor that conversation from taking place.
Yes, but there's a difference between saying bad opinions and inciting violence.
Well, if someone's doxing someone or
saying
threatening
go do this.
force, well, obviously those individuals should be obviously dealt with the First Amendment and the law like we have on the books right now. Of course, that's something that has been followed.
Right.
And that's nothing different.
I understand. I'm just saying in this capacity, I am 100% against inciting violence.
Yeah,
and
it's
I
illegal.
always exactly. I always say this: free speech stops when you start directing people to commit crimes and hurt others. YouTube is saying right now that too many people in the chat are saying
I think as a moderator from Minds, I think that they did the right thing, because it's illegal to incite violence, and if they leave the incitement of violence on their platform, that they become liable.
Well, deal with those individuals, though. Don't take down a whole conversation.
The problem with the live chat is
you're right, but with 100,000 people,
so what they'll do is they'll go on the comments later and they'll remove any violence incitements and they'll strike those accounts. But it was just too much at once for them for any moderator or AI to probably even to control.
I'll tell you guys what. It's really, really simple. Who wants to be the official Twitter chat question receiver?
I can do it.
I'll do it.
Everybody, actually.
Yeah. Right now,
at
fire
Sour
me
Patch
off on
Lids.
Twitter.
Yep.
You can follow
Ian
at Sour Patch
Crossland.
Lids and tweet at questions.
Oh, at Jack Murphy Live.
At Jack Murphy Live.
There you go. At
know
Jack
Jack
Murphy
Murphy.
Live.
At Luke, we are change. Luke, we are change. Feel free to ask me anything, and then we'll
Just
do the
not me,
question.
because I don't check notifications.
Yeah, I check mine for sure.
No kidding.
But we can use
Yeah,
we'll use Twitter, and in that capacity, Twitter is. Look, if you break Twitter's rules, of course, I'm one of the most free speech people when it comes to these social media platforms. But
So we'll
I guess
save it-
that's the best we can do for now. So you guys check your Twitter feeds. We can do questions that way later on in the show, and we can have the chat. You guys can tweet at us.
I already tweeted out no chat for you, because we don't have chat anymore. You may have noticed. So if you guys want to send me any questions you have or whatever on there, that would be good. Sour Patch Lids at Sour Patch Lids on Twitter.
We just invited
80
the
million.
Timcast IRL
okay. I'm
chat
not worried.
into my mentions.
You're
Oh
always,
God, Godspeed,
you're
Jack.
always welcome.
They're
I
good.
wish
They're
you
good
well.
people. I welcome them.
I love them too. They're a
Hello.
wild bunch.
Steve and Dave use eToro.
Finally.
And they sit there and they argue with them. Isn't that amazing? They're not trained. They don't even. Those cops don't have a clue what to do. And they do have guns. I saw at least one of them had a gun.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how much training of de-escalation of mobs that they've been forced to take.
I don't know.
I'm going to say zero.
Zero. I'm going to say zero.
Yeah, I'd also like to know how many times they prepared to protect the Capitol. I'm going to say zero. And wasn't it? Didn't we read that it was 1820 was the last time that the Capitol had been invaded?
1812, I think. Remember how during the Black Lives Matter protests, everybody was subject to being chased down and beaten, including non-black supporters, allies, friends, and family? People were blinded, maimed by raging rogue police. This makes my blood boil. White and a penis makes you invincible, apparently. So there they are. There's the guys there. They got the Trump flag. Wow. That's Gerald Ford. They put a MAGA hat on him. They put a Trump flag in his hand, and the guy, wow. Yeah, I do remember how during the summer protests, everybody was subject to being chased down and beat. It seemed like they were still beating people outside the Capitol, but once they got in, it seemed like they were all nice to them. That's weird.
It is.
It seems like the cops were beating people outside, but then once they got inside, things changed. They were, maybe there weren't enough cops. I don't know what happened. Watch this. So here's a pro-Trump. You want to see this? Now, this is funny, right? Because this guy's going to watch this. Now, we've seen people really brutalized, right? We've seen people brutalized over this past summer like crazy by cops, like actually brutalized, almost killed. That 75-year-old guy, they pushed him dead. He cracked his head. All good women, pushing women, just beating people. Watch this guy.
We have to do something. People have to do something because this could be you or your kids.
What? What? Did you get a paper cut?
Did he forget to wash his hands?
Did you forget to wash your hands after you had a strawberry snow cone? This could be you or your kids. Come on, that's funny. That's funny. This could be you or your kids. And this person says, I bleed more out of my vagina than you have blood on your hand. So back to the interesting stuff. Donald J. Trump, you see this? 2 tweets they deleted. This tweet is no longer available because Twitter has been taking his stuff down. And here's what Twitter said. This means that the account of real Donald Trump will be locked for 12 hours following the removal of these tweets. If the tweets are not removed, the account will remain locked. Future violations of the Twitter rules, including our civic integrity or violent threats policies, will result in permanent suspension of the real Donald Trump account. As a result of unprecedented and ongoing violent situation in Washington, D.C., we have required the removal of the President of the United States tweets that were posted earlier today for repeated and severe violations of our civic integrity policy. I don't know what to tell you, but that is a little chilling. I don't care what he's tweeting. Wow, that is. So what? So they just get to decide when we get to hear from our president. That's Twitter. Isn't that weird?
It is.
You talk about it should be a public utility, huh? So here's one of the tweets they took down. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth. So as far as I can tell, that was one of those tweets they made him take down. And here's another one. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously, viciously ripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. So I think that's what they took down, those 2 tweets. I looked it up at where they delete tweets at ProPublica, and I'm pretty sure that's what the 2 that they took down. Here's what Glenn Greenwald has to say about it. How have hundreds of billions upon hundreds of billions of dollars been spent in the name of security since 9/11, along with the deployment of drones and surveillance tech? Yet a few hundred protesters can so easily breach the Capitol, just waltzing in and taking it over. What happened? I mean, remember they had fences up for the Black Lives Matter protest this summer. They put a whole fence around the White House. I mean, there was nobody getting in there. I mean, it's crazy. Glenn's right. Breaking news, Juan Guaido has declared himself leader of the U.S. NBC News, Twitter says 3 tweets today from President Trump have been removed and his account will be locked for 12 hours following the removal of these tweets. If the tweets are not removed, the account will remain locked. Future violations of the Twitter rules, including our civic integrity or violent threats policies, will result in permanent suspension of the president's account. So that's what's happening at the Capitol today. And why did those cops how did they get in there? Is it because they have guns? Is it because they're white and they have guns? How did they get in there? Is it because they're white and they have guns? I'm serious. Why did the cops let them in? Why are the cops taking side? That's crazy. So it's like some of the cops are still cracking their heads outside, but it seems like once they got inside, cops are all chummy. And those other cops just open the gates, let them come in. So is this a sign of the cops are on the side of Donald Trump? Some of them? Well, they certainly endorsed him. They certainly endorsed his ass hard. So there you go. So that's what's happening. And folks, it's a very precarious situation, but it just reminds me that we couldn't even get the left to endorse, the entire left to endorse a political strategy that was obvious, a nonviolent political strategy to help bring people health care. These people will literally pick up guns and go take over the Capitol over something made up. How do we get that kind of fire in the belly into the people who are fighting for health care? How do we do that? Because as soon as you come up with a great idea to give people health care, half the left goes, don't be mean. Be nicer. I don't know. It makes maybe this isn't the time. Why? Because I like the Justice Democrats, and they're just as shitty as the regular Democrats, and this will reveal it. So now's not the time. When is the time? There's never going to be a time, Jimmy. But just keep saying now's not the time so we don't have to focus on how horrible the Justice Democrats are. Because they're horrible. This idea that they're our allies, they're not our
times by now. I've never heard you use these phrases.
Ever get the feeling you're being
Lewis, congressman from Georgia, was savagely beaten on Bloody Sunday just for marching for voting rights. That act of violence inspired this body, the U.S. Senate, to come together in March of 1965 and work to pass in a bipartisan fashion the Voting Rights Act. We should be coming together today after acts of violence as a United States Senate to affirm the votes of all who cast ballots in November. Instead, we're contemplating an unprecedented objection that would be a massive disenfranchisement of American voters. The Georgia result was very clear, a 12,000 vote margin, 2 certifications by Republican officials, 4 separate recounts and canvasses, 7 lawsuits, as in the other states. If we object to results like this, the message is so clear. We are saying to states, no matter how secure and accurate your elections are, we'll gladly overthrow them if we don't like who you voted for. But more importantly, what we'll be saying, really what we'll be doing, is as the body that acted together to guarantee Americans the right to vote, we will become the agent of one of the most massive disenfranchisements in the history of this country. So I urge all of my colleagues, please oppose these objections. Thank you, and I yield to my colleague from New Jersey.
Senator from New Jersey.
Mr. Vice President, I can only think of 2 times in American history that individuals laid siege to our Capitol, stormed our sacred civic spaces, and tried to upend and overrun this government. One was in the War of 1812, and the other one was today. What's interesting about the parallel between the two is they both were waving flags to a sole sovereign, to an individual, surrendering democratic principles to the cult of personality. One was a monarch in England, and the other were the flags I saw all over our Capitol, including in the hallways and in this room, to a single person named Donald Trump. The sad difference between these two times is one was yet another nation in the history of our country that tried to challenge the United States of America. But this time, we brought this hell upon ourselves. My colleague from Texas said that this was a moment where there were unprecedented allegations of voter fraud. Yes, that is true. They were unprecedented when the president, before the election even happened, said, if I lose this election, then the election was rigged. That's unprecedented. It's unprecedented before the night of the voting even the counting of the vote was even done that he called it rigged. And it's unprecedented that he is fanning the flames of conspiracy theory to create a smokescreen in this nation to cover what he is trying to do, which is undermine our democratic principles. But it's not just that. The shame of this day is it's being aided and abetted by good Americans who are falling prey, who are choosing Trump over truth, who are surrendering to the passion of lies as opposed to standing up and speaking truth to power, who are trying to fundraise off of the shame of conspiracy theories as opposed to doing the incalculably valuable, patriotic thing to speak truth to our nation. Our democracy is wounded, and I saw it when I saw pictures of yet another insurgency, of a flag of another group of Americans who tried to challenge our nation. I saw the flag of the Confederacy there. What will we do? How will we confront this shame? How will we confront this dark second time in American history? I pray that we remember a Georgian. And his words, all I can say is we must in spirit join together like those Georgians on a bridge called the Edmund Pettus who joined hands, who were called threats to our democracy, who were called outrageous epithets when they sought to expand our democracy, to save it and to heal it, when they joined arm in arm and said what we should say now, commit ourselves to that ideal, that together we shall overcome.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I yield up to 5 minutes to the Senator from Nebraska, Senator Sass.
Senator from Nebraska.
Mr. President, thank you. And Mr. Vice President, let me just say before I begin, thank you for the way you have fulfilled your constitutional duties and your oath of office today. It obviously hasn't been easy. Colleagues, today has been ugly. And when I came to the floor this morning, I planned to talk about the lesson of 1801, because I'm kind of a history nerd. And I wanted to celebrate the glories of the peaceful transition of power across our nation's history. It feels a little naive now to talk about ways that American civics might be something that could unite us and bring us back together. 1801 blew everybody's mind all over the world, by the way. John Adams loses to Thomas Jefferson, and Adams willingly leaves the executive mansion and moves back to Massachusetts, and Jefferson peacefully assumes power. And people all over Europe said, that must be fake news. Those must be bad reports. There's no way any executive would ever willingly lay down power. And yet Adams, in defeat, did something glorious to give all of us a gift. I wanted to celebrate that. And it feels a little bit harder now. This building has been desecrated. Blood has been spilled in the hallways. I was with octogenarian members of this chamber that needed to have troops and police stabilize them to get down the stairs at a time when a lot of our staffs were panicked and under their desks and not knowing what was going to happen to them. It was ugly today. But you know what? It turns out that when something's ugly, talking about beauty isn't just permissible. Talking about beauty is obligatory in a time like that. Why? Why would we talk about beauty after the ugliness of today? Because our kids need to know that this isn't what America is. What happened today isn't what America is. They've been given a glorious inheritance. This is the 59th presidential election. If the vice president wasn't the chair and if the president pro tem was, I'd have made some joke that Chuck Grassley has voted in 2/3 of those 59 presidential elections. He's laughing. It's not as good as Hit Dear, Dear Dead, but it's still got a Grassley laugh. I don't think we want to tell the Americans that come after us that this republic is broken, that this is just a banana republic, that our institutions can't be trusted. I don't think we want that. We don't want that in this body. We don't want that in our hometowns. I don't think we want to tell our kids that America's best days are behind us, because it's not true. That's not who we are. America isn't Hatfields and McCoys, blood feud forever. America's a union. There's a lot that's broken in this country, but not anything that's so big that the American people can't rebuild it, that freedom and community and entrepreneurial effort and that neighborhoods can't rebuild. Nothing that's broken is so big that we can't fix it. Generations of our forefathers and our foremothers, probably not a word, our ancestors, have spilled blood to defend the glories of this republic. Why would they do that? Because America is the most exceptional nation in the history of the world, and because the Constitution is the greatest political document that's ever been written. Most governments in the past have said might makes right, and we saw some of that hooligan nuttery today. Might makes right. No, it doesn't. God gives us rights by nature, and government is just our shared project to secure those rights. America has always been about what we choose to do together, the way we reaffirm our constitutional system, where we've got some governmental tasks, and we all in this body could do better at those governmental tasks, but the heart of America is not government. The center of America is not Washington, D.C. The center of America is the neighborhoods where 330 million Americans are raising their kids and trying to put food on the table and trying to love their neighbor. That's the center of America. We're not supposed to be the most important people in America. We're supposed to be servant leaders who try to maintain a framework for ordered liberty so that there's a structure that back home where they live, they can get from the silver frame of structure and order to the golden apple at the center, as Washington would have said it, which is the things that they build together. The places where they coach Little League, the places where they invite people to synagogue or church. Sometimes the big things we do together are governmental, like kicking Hitler's ass or like going to the moon. Sometimes there is governmental stuff, but the heart of America is about places where moms and dads are raising kids, and we're supposed to serve them by maintaining order and by rejecting violence. You can't do big things like that if you hate your neighbors. You can't do big things together as Americans if you think other Americans are the enemy. Look, there's a lot of uncertainty about the future. I get it. There's a lot that does need to be rebuilt. But if you're angry, I want to beg you, don't let the screamers who monetize hate have the final word. Don't let nihilists become your drug dealers. There are some who want to burn it all down. We met some of them today, but they aren't going to win. Don't let them be your prophets. Instead, organize, persuade, but most importantly, love your neighbor. Visit the widower down the street who's lonely and doesn't want to tell anybody that his wife died and he doesn't have a lot of friends. Shovel somebody's neighbor, shovel somebody's driveway. You can't hate somebody who just shoveled your driveway. The heart of life is about community and neighborhood, and we're supposed to be servant leaders. The constitutional system is still the greatest order for any government ever, and it's our job to steward it and protect it. Let's remember that today when we vote.
Democratic leader.
Senator Durbin.
Senator from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. lawyer caught a train to Washington. His name was Abraham Lincoln. It wasn't his first trip here. He'd served as a congressman 15 years before, and he returned in the beginning of the Civil War to serve as president. It was a different place than he knew it as congressman. In 15 years, it had changed a lot. The Spriggs boarding house across the street, which is now the Library of Congress, was gone. And this building was changing. Big changes. They're building a dome on the Capitol. But they were also in the earliest days of a war, and President Lincoln was counseled, stop building the dome. It costs too much money, and we can't spend any more time on it. And he said, no, we're going to build that dome, and we're going to finish it. That dome and this building will be a symbol of this country that will survive this Civil War and come back strong. So they built the dome, they won the war, and since those days, that dome and this building have been a symbol to this country, a symbol of unity and of hope. Tourists come through here before COVID-19 by the tens of thousands. And if you've ever noticed their tours, they're often shushed. People are saying, show some respect for this building. We know this building in the Rotunda as a place where some of the greatest American heroes of both political parties lie in state, and we go there to honor them. We know this building because we work here. We enact laws here that change America. We gather for State of the Union messages from presidents and honor the people in the gallery. This is a special place. This is a sacred place. But this sacred place was desecrated by a mob today on our watch. This temple to democracy was defiled by thugs who roam the halls and sat in that chair, Mr. Vice President, the one that you vacated at 2:15 this afternoon, sat and posed for pictures, those who were roaming around this chamber. What brought this on? Did this mob spring spontaneously from America? No. This mob was invited to come to Washington on this day by this president for one reason, because he knew the Electoral College vote was going to be counted this day. He wanted this mob to disrupt the constitutional process which we are part of. This mob was inspired by a president who cannot accept defeat. If you wonder whether I'm going too far in what I say, just read the transcript with the Secretary of State from Georgia and listen to this president's wild conspiracy theories, one after the other, swatted down by that Republican elected official and his attorney as having no basis in fact. This president begs, he coaxes, he even threatens that Secretary of State to find the votes he needs. In any other venue, that would be a simple, obvious crime. The lengths he will go to are obvious. The Texas senator says to us, well, many people still agree with him, you know, when it gets down to the bottom line. Many people have fallen for this presidential position that it must have been a rigged election if I lost. Well, I would say that after we've lost count, 57 lawsuits, 62 lawsuits, I've heard so many numbers, after 90 different judges, after this president took his case, the best he could put together, to the highest court in the land across the street, where he has personally chosen 3 justices on the Supreme Court, I say to the senator from Texas, you know much more about that court than I do. I don't believe they let that paper that he sent up there even hit the desk before they laughed it out of the court. And that's the best he had to offer. No evidence whatsoever of this rigged election and this fraudulence. The senator from Texas says, we just want to create a little commission. 10 days, we're going to audit all the states, particularly the ones in contention here, and find out what actually occurred. And it really draws its parallel in 1876, Hayes and Tilden. Don't forget what that commission, that so-called political compromise, achieved. It was not just some ordinary governmental commission. It was a commission that killed Reconstruction, that established Jim Crow, that even after a civil war which tore this nation apart, it re-enslaved African Americans. And it was a commission that invited the voter suppression we are still fighting today in America. Let me close by saying this. The vote we're going to have here is a clear choice of whether we are going to feed the beast of ignorance or we are going to tell the truth to the American people. We saw that beast today roaming the halls. Let's not invite it back.
Majority Leader.
President, I yield up to 5 minutes to the Senator from Kansas, Senator Marshall.
Senator from Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Freedom of speech and the freedom to protest are provided in our Constitution. And while I share the same frustrations many Americans have over the presidential election, the violence and mob rule which occurred at the U.S. Capitol today and across the country over the past year are unacceptable, and I condemn them at the highest level. And like all of us in the chamber, I'm thankful for the heroic law enforcement officers who worked feverishly to restore order so we get back to the electoral certification process. During my 29-year career as an obstetrician and gynecologist, too often I had to sit down with patients and give them a very bad diagnosis. It might have been a young mother of 3 who I delivered all 3 of her babies, now with metastatic breast cancer, or perhaps another woman with advanced cervical or ovarian cancer, all with a very challenging prognosis. But before I sat down with each one of those patients, I carefully reviewed all their labs, their x-rays, and their pathology to make sure I had the facts straight. But at the end of the day, my final recommendation was always going to be a recommendation from my heart. I want my fellow Kansans and all Americans to know that I've given as much consideration and thought surrounding the issue objecting to a state's electoral college votes as I did considering the treatment plan for a serious health concern. And today's decision, once again, is from my heart. Mr. President, I rise today to restore integrity to our republic. And I rise to join the many of our colleagues who are all concerned for current and future generations. We must restore faith and confidence in one of our republic's most hallowed patriotic duties, voting. There is no question our U.S. Constitution empowers state legislatures to execute free, legal, and fair elections. Unfortunately, in several states, the clear authority of those state legislatures to determine the rules for voting were usurped by governors, secretaries of states, and activist courts. Our laws and Constitution should always be followed, especially in a time of crisis. I don't rise to undo a state's legally obtained electoral college votes. Rather, I rise in hopes of improving the integrity of the ballot to hold states accountable to the time-proven constitutional system of the Electoral College. This is why I urge the formation of an electoral commission to give constructive suggestions and recommendations that states can make to make our elections once again safe, free, and fair after a year of jarring irregularities. We must and will have a peaceful transition to power. To all my fellow Americans, I have no doubt that our republic can go stronger through this difficult day. May God bless this great republic. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.
Democratic Leader.
Senator Duckworth.
Senator from Illinois.
President, in 2004, I packed up my rucksack, laced up my boots, and deployed to Iraq, ready to sacrifice whatever was asked of me, all because I loved this nation, willing to sacrifice my life if needed. Because I believe in the sanctity of our electoral system, which had declared George W. Bush my commander-in-chief. I earned my wounds, proudly fighting in a war I did not support, on the orders of a president I did not vote for, because I believed in, and I still do believe in, the values of our nation, because I believe in a government of, by, and for the people, where voters choose who leads them, not the other way around. I have spent my entire adult life defending our democracy, but I never thought it would be necessary to defend it from an attempted violent overthrow in our nation's own Capitol building. Well, I refuse to let anyone intent on instigating chaos or inciting violence deter me from carrying out my constitutional duties. You know, when my Army buddies and I raised our right hands, when the 45,000 troops in Arizona raised their right hands and swore to protect and defend the Constitution, we did not qualify our oath by saying that we'd follow orders only when the Commander-in-Chief was someone whose election we were happy with. Just like when every senator in this chamber was sworn into office, we didn't mutter under our breath that we discharge our duties only when it served our political interests or helped us to avoid the wrath of a petty, insecure, wannabe tin pot dictator on the precipice of losing power and relevance. No, there is no ambiguity here. Joe Biden won the election with a record number of votes. Republican officials nationwide confirmed those results, including in Arizona, as has judge after Trump-appointed judge. Even Trump's Attorney General admitted that the United States Department of Justice had not found widespread fraud that would have affected the outcome. Yet still, many of my Republican colleagues are asking us to ignore all of that. With no evidence of their own, they're asking us to ignore court rulings, ignore
flag of our country, a flag of the United States of America. On it, it says, one country, one destiny. One country, one destiny, written on the flag. That was also what was embroidered in Abraham Lincoln's coat that he had on that fateful night. Lincoln's party, Lincoln's message, one country, one destiny. So on this holy day of Epiphany, let us pray. I'm a big believer in prayer. Let us pray that there will be peace on earth and that it will begin with us. Let us pray that God will continue to bless America. And with that, let us proceed with our responsibilities to the Constitution, to which we have just within 72 hours taken the oath to uphold. For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to the objection.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, it is a sad day in America. It is a wrenching day in America. It is a day in which our words and our actions have had consequences of a very, very negative nature. We ought to watch our words and think what it may mean to some. My remarks were written before the tragic, dangerous, and unacceptable actions. And unacceptable is such a tame word. My remarks started with, Madam Speaker, the American people today are witnessing one of the greatest challenges to our democracy in its 244-year history. Little did I know that this Capitol would be attacked by the enemy within. I was here on 9/11 when we were attacked by the enemy without. We need to all work together to tame and reduce the anger, and yes, the hate that some stoke. What some, not all, Madam Speaker, but some in this House and in this Senate are doing today will not change the outcome of the election, which is the clear and insurmountable victory of President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. Instead, all they will accomplish is to further the dangerous divisions. This was written before this Capitol was assaulted. Before this democracy was put aside by thousands. Encouraged by the Commander-in-Chief. Instead, all they will accomplish is to further the dangerous divisions, as I said, among our people and energize conspiracy theories stoked by our foreign adversaries, which seek to erode America's confidence in our democracy and our system of free and fair elections. I was here in 2000. I was strongly in favor of Al Gore for president. And my candidate got more votes than the other candidate. His name was George Bush, of course. And one of the saddest days was January 20th of 2001 when our candidate, who won the election in my view, was not elected.